our voice in the Spanish market is what's authentic and it penetrates. And so we've really worked in that niche. But you gotta believe in that niche. You can't, you can't do it as an afterthought. You can't do it as division, so to speak. You gotta be 100% all in, and that's what we are. And I attribute that to part of our success as well.
Last year in 2023, you've settled close to $250 million in just 1 year, which puts you in the top 1% probably of 1% in the PI law. There are very few law firms that I've known of, and I've met many lawyers who own substantial PI law firms that can do $250 million in 1 year. Hi there. I have a small but really meaningful favor to ask you. I watch at the stats on our YouTube channel and Spotify channel, wherever most people listen and watch our podcast, and I see that over 80% of everybody who listens to it regularly is not a subscriber. I'm asking you to subscribe to this channel, and the reason for that is my mission and the mission of my team is to help as many small law firm owners to learn how to transform their law firms into better businesses, and so they in turn enjoy better lives. When you hit subscribe button, you tell these platforms that this is content worth listening, worth viewing, and they in turn will show it to many other small law firm owners and hopefully help me fulfill our mission of helping them create a better business and enjoy better lives. So would you please do me this favor? It would mean the world to me, and hit the subscribe button. And my promise to you is that I will continue to work hard at creating good content with practical ideas that help you and your teams grow better law firms. Thank you. Welcome to another great podcast of GLF Podcast. I have an amazing guest with me here today, Greg Ward of the Ward Law Group. Amazing story, first of all. You got to hear this story. I'm going to give some highlights, and then Greg, you're going to take it away. I've read quite a bit about you, and I've heard quite a bit about you. You came from an interesting background, and you've built up a success that puts you in a fraction of top 1% in the law as far as business-minded lawyers really who have built up substantial success. 12 years ago, back in 2012, you were broke, recently divorced, you lost your dad, you lost your sister, both to cancer within a short period of time. You were sleeping on a couch. And I think, as you mentioned in one of the interviews, you had nowhere to go but up. An encounter with God led you to the new place. You and your wife, Honey, built a very substantial law firm. I believe you're close to 150 employees now, all across the world, and many of them are based in the United States. You have 3 offices, and I believe you're expanding into a 4th state, New York, Florida, Texas, and now going to New Jersey. Last year in 2023, you've settled close to $250 million in just 1 year, which puts you in the top 1% probably of 1% in the PI law. There are very few law firms that I've known of, and I've met many lawyers who own substantial PI law firms that can do $250 million in 1 year. And it seems like misfortunes turn into fortunes, but you have done so many things well. You have executed and plugged along, which brought you to this amazing place where you are today. I know you told me before we hit the record button that you're atop of the world in one of the newest penthouses in Miami overlooking the ocean. Want to know the story, want to know how you did it, and if you were to start over today, how would you do it?
Well, that's a good question. I appreciate all of it you said, by the way. I will tell you from my personal viewpoint, I feel like there's been a tremendous amount of luck or blessings along the way that, I don't necessarily feel different than I feel when I was sleeping on the couch, in the sense that, certainly what I've been able to do, it feels a little bit unwarranted for me because I remember all the mistakes, right? And by the way, one of the shortcomings that I think that I have is I focus more on the mistakes and the problems than I focus on the victories and the glories.
Most intelligent people do.
Yeah, right. Most business leaders do that, right? Like it's you jump over something, a big hurdle, obstacle, or you move it, and then the next, you just remember the pain of that and you move on to the next thing. You don't sit and celebrate. So So, what would I do differently right now? I can answer based on what I just said. I'd celebrate some of the victories coming up. It was a lot easier to celebrate when I had 20 people. Because let me tell you, I remember we used to get our first, I get a tender in Florida. It's $10,000 for the policies. And we used to play songs and dance. And then it was $25,000. Then it was $100,000. And we would, and I think I remember our first, maybe it was a $250,000 or $500,000 tender. We closed the office. We took a day off, and those were celebrations we had early back in the days. And that was a lot of fun and a lot of good times. But as more and more responsibility grew, we had to get more and more tight with our procedures. We still have fun, but it's on just a different kind of scale that we do now. So talking about the journey for a second, you're right. When I was sleeping on the couch, I had nowhere to go but up. And you get pretty clear about a lot of things. You get clear about who your friends are, right? When you're sleeping on a couch, you don't have a lot of friends, right? And, it's pretty obvious to you, where you're at. And not only was I sleeping on the couch, but I was drinking a lot. And I was just not in a good place. I had, several $100,000 in debt. The law firm I had started was not doing well. And a lot of it was because of the death. My father and my sister both had protracted battles with cancer. And I was with my father in a hospital room for 6 months trying to work at a laptop sitting next to him. He was delusional. He had and I was the only person he trusted. So I felt like I had to be there with him during that very difficult time. And my ex-wife, her mother and father both had major strokes. So she went into Greece and Germany with my 2-year-old daughter. I didn't see her for a year, and she was taking care of her family. And that's kind of was the beginning of the end of the marriage for me too, my ex-wife, because she had fallen in love with someone else over there. And I don't blame her, because I understand we were just in an absolute disaster of a space. And so, but as you'd mentioned, I went through a spiritual transformation, and I think that that's the first most important key to the entire story of what we're talking about is that none of this is because of me, it's because of God. And I didn't have a relationship with God at that point. I think he was letting me get into that terrible hole so that when I came out of it, there's a Bible verse, when Abraham and Lot are splitting up in the Old Testament, they're like, I want to make sure that Lot, it never say that anything that they gave me was resulted in my success. Same thing with me. I was stripped down to nothing. So I can say today that the complete and total reason for my success is because of my relationship with God and my marriage with my wife, right? Because she's the one who came into my life at that point, saw the good things in me, helped me heal from what I had gone through, took me to church where I had my spiritual encounter. And I had the first time I set foot in this church, I was Catholic, but when I went to a non-denominational church, I had a real spiritual epiphany, and that changed and transformed my life. So so I can definitely say, for anybody who's listening, I don't want to sound too like a holy roller, but the truth is that when I try to do it on my own, and I had great success, got the best graduate of my class and commencement speaker in law school and had a big job at a big firm and all that. But that ended up with me failing because I was trying to do it on my own. Then I had the spiritual experience, and I just realigned so many things in my life that then put me, I think, on the path to real success.
So from 2012, you have started a new firm. Now with your wife, Honey, is your partner. And you've built this thing up to this amazing place where you are today. How did you do it?
Well, it was a journey. And this is another thing, people, you're talking about my firm is so big, and I actually see it as small compared to what it could be. So it's a question of scale.
It's a journey.
If you told me 12 years ago what I have today, I would say that's monstrous. It's huge. But now I'm thinking, well, it's big, but we have these other needs that are not met in the community. And so therefore I want to keep expanding. But, starting off, it was just me and Hani. We had a fold-out table. There's a laptop computer. We sublet an office. It was like a little closet, actually. And I told my wife, who just graduated from law school, look, I can't pay you anything. I can give you gas money. We were dating at the time. I said, I can just give you gas money, but I think that, and I think this is something that could be special. She wanted to do PI. I was doing commercial litigation, so I wasn't even doing PI yet. But I had left my old business partners. I had taken most of my clients with me, and so I had some revenue. And she said, okay. And I remember the first document review I put her on, and she did a terrible job with that. And so I was like, okay, she's not cut out for commercial litigation at all. But she was really good with marketing. She was really good with people.
At least you didn't fire her.
No, I couldn't. I was in love with her. How could I do that? We weren't married yet, though. And so, her mom was a super Christian woman, and she would call her at 10 o'clock at night, and she'd say, young lady shouldn't be out unchaperoned at this time of night. And I was like, I swear to you, we're working. And we were working and, working hard. It's funny. And so she would, have to go home at 10 o'clock at night. But I couldn't fire her. She was my only staff. So, and she hadn't passed the bar yet either. She was studying for the bar. And anyway, so she passed the bar. She had said she wants to do personal injury. And I was very arrogant still at the time. God was still working on me. I said, you go do your little personal injury practice. I'm going to keep doing my commercial litigation. And my commercial litigation practice ended the day that she got her first PI client in, and we got a $50,000 tender with one letter. And I was like, what? What? I mean, I had sent the letter, of course. I knew I'd sent the letter, but it was a tender. And I said, wait a minute. We got this, this is what it took. Now, I wasn't naive. I knew other cases require more work, but at this point, I was thinking, how much does it cost me or take me to argue with my clients about paying a $16,000 commercial litigation invoice? And I'd been fired by one of my big clients because they had found somebody cheaper to do the work. And I said, you know what, let me check out this personal injury thing. And I had some experience, so I started doing that. And, she started getting better at the advertising, and it just, we started with 1, then 2, then 5, then 10, then 20 cases a month. And about 20 cases a month, I said, you know what, I need to be doing this full time too. And so we basically wrapped up the commercial litigation matters I had and just did PI. And of that first tender, we had taken all that money and put it into advertising. By that point, we had kind of figured out a couple advertising avenues that would work. The first radio station we went to was starting to bear out. We were doing a lot of word of mouth, getting around, talking to some people in the community, and they were sending us some work. So, and that was really the foundation for the early days of the practice.
And I watched an interview with you somewhere, and you said that you were very, very focused on one community. You decided to go into Spanish community and just focus on that. And before we hit the record button, you said that you were tempted to go into the mainstream English-speaking community, but you stopped yourself. Is that correct?
That's right. Mm-hmm. So you started to mention the God connection. I also believe, and I'm a born again Christian. I believe that everything I have is because of God, but I also believe that there are certain groups of people in the Bible that we are called to serve: widows, orphans, and interestingly, immigrants, right? The Bible says, be kind to immigrants, for you too were strangers in the land of Egypt. This is in the Old Testament. Jesus actually says, I was a stranger and you welcomed me in, right? And if you go back into the Greek, the strangers, xenos is the word in Greek. And if you look at the history of the word xenos, it means a foreigner, someone who is scary because they're foreign. Anyway, so I looked at this and I said, you know what? And I had grown up, there's some foreign exchange students I really liked. And I thought, man, for somebody to leave their home and come here to the United States for something better, that's very special and scary. And then I realized here in Miami, there's a lot of people who are taken advantage of. My wife was one of them. When she came here, she had to sell mangoes and socks at a flea market. Her mom worked 3 jobs and got no overtime. I mean, just awful things. People would stiff her on her paychecks. Waitress, they didn't tip, all those kinds of things that they're so vulnerable as a group of people. And we see the other side of it where you have the gang members and all that stuff. Yeah, it's terrible. Those people are awful, the criminals. But most immigrants are good, hardworking people, and they just want what's better for their family. Like, I've got a guy in my office who we sponsored him to get his green card. I mean, he lived in Venezuela. His daughters were going to get raped. I mean, there's no choice about that. He came here because he knew his kids it was bad for them. It is bad in places like Venezuela and Cuba. It's awful. And so, that group of people is somebody I wanted to serve, and they're very vulnerable. And part of my calling, I believe, or my purpose in life is to help people who are vulnerable like that. Now, the temptation of the English market, anybody who's growth minded, they say, I want the biggest possible market. But I just realized that, if I could hyper focus and get really good at serving this group of people, the English market will come. I mean, I do feel like, and we do get English speaking clients all the time. usually from their grandmothers, their moms, somebody who's related to them that speaks Spanish, but they say, hey, we got a great result from these people. But the truth is, I don't want to beat my head against the wall with everybody else. And I can do my Spanish marketing so much better now because that's all I do is Spanish marketing. It's really hard for people to compete with the authentic message of my wife and me. And I think I said this before, that I raised my children speaking Spanish. The first 3 years, we only spoke to them in Spanish. Why? Because it's their culture. That's who they are. They need to learn that. They will learn English in school. But it was really important for me to understand, for them to understand where they come from and who they are. And so we really focused on that. And that's the kind of backing we have to the commitment to this community. As I mentioned to you also, that a lot of people want to add on the Spanish market. They want to add it on. Just let's bolt it onto our regular practice. You can't do that with Spanish speakers. You've got to understand them intimately and understand even the differences in cultures. There's very different cultures. And so that was a multi-layered answer to your question. But yeah, we focused on Spanish speaking. We still focus on Spanish speaking. We still almost only do exclusively Spanish speaking advertisement. I do some stuff that's, business coaching or whatever on Instagram and things in English because my Spanish just isn't that good. But when we're doing advertising, almost all of it, 99% of it's in Spanish.
Interesting. So the journey from the first $50,000 settlement, first $50,000 check to last year, 2023, doing $250 million. How do you attract in short 12 years? 12 years is nothing. It's very little time. 4,200 days, give or take. How do you go from one client to this massive influx of clients? What are the main channels for generating business? Because I know every small law firm owner who is watching this, listening to this, reading this will be like, but how? What are the things that are working for you?
Let me tell you the problems I have when I talk to small law firm owners and they don't listen to what I say, right? Hear me, hear me now, believe me later. That's what Hans and Franz used to say. Hear me now, believe me later. You can scale, but you've got to be willing to give up everything you think you know to scale, right? So you've got to be like, we're in law school, we're conditioned to say, we have to deal with what can go wrong. To be a business that scales, you have to say, I'm going to look at what's going to go right, and I'm going to scale the bejesus out of that. And so a lot of the small law firm guys, they're like, yeah, I want to scale. Like I had a guy call me the other day, and he's like, I need to hire my first attorney. And he goes through, here's this guy, A, B, C, D. And I said, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. That guy's, he's not a culture fit. You've got to know, what you're looking to do. It sounds like he's not all in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the guy was looking for me to just rubber stamp the hire. And I didn't. And he went and hired him anyway. And I say the other day, this is 4 or 5 months ago. So last month I got a call. Yeah, it didn't work out. It ended badly. Because the other piece of advice I gave him is make sure you paper it. Because when it goes bad, you want to have documentation. I'm not sure he did that either, but this is one of the things. So you guys got to listen. So step one, join a mastermind group. Join a mastermind group that has people bigger than you and listen to what they do. Because there's 100 little things, 100 distinctions that people make along the line. What did I actually do? Well, first I identified an advertising outlet that worked and I maximized that so I wouldn't get any more clients. And then I found the next advertising outlet that would work. But if I didn't build the infrastructure and have the training for the employees and really, make sure that those first seasons of things where we were providing excellent service, that'd be a problem. I make sure in my firm that lawyers only do what lawyers need to do. There are some firms the lawyers have to do everything. They've got to write their own demands. That is absurd. A lawyer does not need to write a demand. You give them a form. You make sure they check that demand and make sure that all the key facts are in there. And you make sure that lawyer makes the call to the client and does their detective work to find out how that accident really hurt that client. But they should not be writing demands. They should not be requesting medical records. They should not be negotiating liens with a hospital or whatever it is. You get one person that does that. You don't have the attorney who's conditioned and they negotiate the settlements with the adjusters for sure, right? They should do that too. But they don't and interact with a client in certain key moments. You just got to think about how can I do this at scale and how can I have the best of the best at each some attorneys do property damage, right? We don't even get paid for that. I'm like, no, you get one person to do that. I have one person who does EUOs, right? Because they're hyper specialized, so they can do something faster. If you've got attorneys doing 50 different things, and that's just one category. You want to make sure that your paralegals are very trained. We have different departments now. We have, the investigators who do the signups, investigations. We have the intake, which is really early medical management. We have the surgical medical management. We have the production. We have the demand writing team, which is offshore, and then they write the demands, and they're all doctors, and they send us the prepared demands, and the attorneys review those demands and edit them, and they need to know how that by the case. And we have our reductions department supervised by an attorney to make sure they get the things. And then we have and the attorney stays the same throughout the cases, but the paralegals are doing a lot of the work, and the attorneys only do what they need to do. Now I go to some people and they say, oh, no, I can't do that. Well, you start little by little. You start off with first thing, attorney should not be, if you're going to do at scale, attorney should not be intimately involved in the sign up. Why? Because you're going to mess it up, right? You need to be there to answer the questions about liability and talk to the client to make sure they have a case. Besides that, gathering information, all that stuff, no, let somebody else do that. And then you come back in later on and double check it, right? Medical management, well, you need to have a call with a client about what's wrong, but then the day-to-day, you have your paralegal do that. Again, there's a difference of opinion, but if you're going to scale, now the other thing, by the way, you need case management software so you can follow all of this along, and we record all of our calls, so we make sure we audit it. So we've come at a point where we're at a process. But early on, when you're an attorney, you've got, let's say, 10 people, you sit in the middle of your office. You don't get an office. You sit in the middle of your office, and you listen to everything that's going on around you. And that's what we did, my wife and I. And when my wife had the babies, we both sat. We had the babies in an office, and we sat in the middle of the office. It was her and I, and we sat there, and it was like a little hurricane going on around us. We could hear everything that everybody was doing. And so that's how we got to and then we started identifying who had talent and managers, et cetera, et cetera. But, the point is you first got to believe that you can scale and have a vision that you can scale and know who you want to serve. And that's really critical, I think, the first real step. But we're as lawyers, we're terrible business people. We're conditioned not to grow. We're conditioned to think of all the things that can go wrong. And I'm here to tell you, listen, there's a lot of things that can go right. And if you want to really have an impact, you got to start thinking about scaling.
So here's what I got. Number one, believe.
Ted Lasso, baby. Ted Lasso.
You have to, right? You have to believe, right? You have to believe that this is possible for you. Otherwise, you're not going to scale. You're going to find numerous reasons why it's not going to work, and you will not invest in yourself. Number two, find your niche. Can't go too broad. Go too broad, you're going to have so much competition. You're not going to stand out. You're not going to attract clients. Number three, specialize. Specialize and delegate. Don't try to do everything. It's impractical, it's impossible, and at the end of the day, it's going to cost you tremendously. These are my little add-ons because I know I've been an entrepreneur for the last 24 years. I've been through this before. Trying to do everything, to do fewer things, and not just
let me talk about delegate for a second. Here's a personal story that I have. Like, we as lawyers, this is a great example, delegation. We as lawyers think we're the very best at every part of our business.
And that's not true.
Patently false. Absolutely false. I remember the day that I realized this. My wife is a better negotiator than me. I've been practicing law for 25 years. She was, at the time, 12 years ago, she'd been practicing law for 1 year. And I've been practicing law for, 13 years, do the math, right? And I listened to her on a negotiation call, and I said, you know what? You're a better negotiator than me. You will now negotiate every case. And I have to keep my mouth shut because I'm really great at blowing up deals because I want to try the case. Screw you guys. But I realized that, that's my ego. I have to really dispassionately evaluate the settlement and what the client wants. And when I realized my wife was a better negotiator than me, forget it. I'm done negotiating. And is it humiliating for me to admit that a first-year attorney, this Cuban, it's a little embarrassing for me because I think I'm a great negotiator. But I think the better tool is I can recognize talent in other people and promote that talent. Now, if she has a question, so what we would do is I'd say, I can close the deal for you. If you want to blow up a deal, I'm great at that. Because I say, screw you, we're going to trial, right? If you want me to close a deal and say, listen, this is the last number, so we had a process, right, where she would get to the point where she thinks she maxed out, and then I would take over and just do the last one or two moves, right? And that was a great strategy because then I'm not in the nitty gritty of the negotiation, right? And she's able to negotiate, and so she did great with that. And then we found other people who were better than her at negotiation, and that's what they do. And so that's, so you've got to be, willing. Now, I'm looking for lawyers who are better at trying cases than me. I'm pretty good. I've had a bunch of $1 million verdicts, $1 million plus verdicts. I don't try cases anymore. I can't. I've got too much other work to do. So I want to find the people who are very comfortable trying cases and can get big numbers. I bring outside lawyers in who I know are tested. I'd love to hire somebody in-house for that, but I need to have the credentials to do it. So Find people who are better than you. And if you can't, then your assessment of your abilities is wrong. And again, I'm going to talk direct. I'm not going to mince words. If you think that you're the best person at every function of your business, you're absolutely wrong. I remember case signups, right? How to go and walk the client into signing the paperwork. I was not good at that either, so I would get somebody who's better at that than me, and so it evolves, right? And as a lawyer, if you want to scale, you're going to have to acknowledge, I am very good at vision. I'm very good at seeing talent in people. I'm very good at promoting and developing their talent. That's what I'm best at. And if you're not best at those things, then you should be, you could be the trial lawyer of your firm and then hire a guy to be the COO or CEO and get the vision for the firm. You need to rely on those people, but use a trial lawyer. We trial lawyers think we do everything best. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Absolutely wrong.
So going back to the list, believe, niche down, know your strengths and know your weaknesses.
Yes.
Specialize in whatever it is that you're really strong at. Delegate everything else.
Yep.
Now, how do you go about getting so much business? This is what I think most of the people who listen, watch this podcast, read these articles, that's what everyone is interested in.
Yeah, but honestly, if you can't do the things I just said, you can get all the business in the world and fail miserably. This is a warning for you guys. I know. And you're going to say, oh, God, Greg was a loser. He didn't give me anything I wanted. I tell you how to get all the clients you want, right? Find an advertising avenue that works. Invest in that avenue until it doesn't invest anymore. Hand-to-hand marketing now, where you go out to trade associations and all that stuff, or bar events, it just doesn't work. Trial lawyers, maybe that works for it, right? If you got a big trial reputation, then if you got a trial reputation, you're gonna have to take some flyers early on, get some verdicts, and then go out and market yourself as a trial lawyer. But if you want to have a volume firm like what I have, that just bar association. No, I don't go to bar association events. I go there to hire people, but I don't go for marketing purposes. No, people don't really refer as cases because every lawyer thinks they can handle a PI case, even if they're not PI lawyers. And they mess it up, and then they call me after they mess it up, and I say there's nothing I can do, right? How do you get bigger cases? The biggest cases will come from your former clients, right? You're not going to get a massive catastrophic case off of TV. You may get a case off of TV that you do well on that case, and then their brother-in-law gets paralyzed, and you get that case, and that's a big case. That's how you work your way up. It doesn't happen overnight, but it happens within 12 years, as you said. So I can tell you that it happens faster than you probably think it could, but you've got to be diligent about that. But here's what I tell. My wife is the marketer. She's really good at that stuff. But she admits it. If we did not have the structures in place to handle this, we would fail immediately because we would get the big case and we mess it up and we'd be out of business. So you've got to build the systems and processes. So you start off with checklists, right? When you have 10 employees, you start off with checklists. Make sure everything's being done. You got the checklist. You got to run the checklist and make sure they're all being, done. You got to make sure your lawyers are able to follow your systems. One of the problems with lawyers is we don't like to follow systems. I have trouble bringing in senior lawyers because they say, this is our system. You need to work our system. Well, let me tell you about how we can improve it. No. You do it for a year, and then you can talk about improving it, right? I know my system works. So, you guys need to comport with it. We don't want to do that because we're all lone wolf, lone ranger cowboy types, but you've got to build the system. If you want to scale for your company, you got to build your system, and then you got to find people who can buy into your system. Let me back up. Because I'm gonna go off on another tangent. I'm not going to answer the question you want me to answer. I'm going to answer the question I want to answer, which is how do we build the system so that we can support the massive client growth? Because that's actually a harder thing. You got to know your core values, right? You got to know what you stand for. That dictates everything you do after that. We have 7 core values. We sat down. We spent a day going through this. Service to our clients is our most important core value. Any decision we make to serve the client comes first, which means we'll cut our fee, we'll split our fee. We'll do if we mess up something, whatever we have to do, if the client is suffering, we will suffer more than the client. Number 2, service to the team. If you have somebody who, is going to be hurt by something you're going to do, you need to not do that, right? You need to put your other team members first. And we all do that. If I have a manager who says, I don't want to let go of this person to fill this other job until I can replace that person, no, you're not putting the team first. I've yelled at people for that. Number 3, service to the community. We've got to give back to the community we draw from. And so philanthropy, education, right? All of those things are super important. Accountability, super important. That's the glue that holds it together. Faith, which is believe, right? Leadership and loyalty. Those are our core values. Every decision we make should be guided in large part by those 7 core values. You need to know what you stand for before you start growing a business, because you will get to the point when I say this, when we go to the English market, will I be able to serve the English market as well as I'm serving the Spanish market? No, then I'm not going to do it. Service to the client comes first. right? Not service to Greg Ward to the bottom line, service to the client. And so I know this group I'm plugged into serving. So that's so critically important, because everybody, look, marketing it's a science and an art. You can do it, but I believe that when you build the system, God will flood your system if you have it for the right reasons, right? If you're doing the work for the right reasons, you will grow. It's a spiritual principle, right? And by the way, giving back to the community, I think, as you give back, you get back more too from the community. It's reaping and sowing. It's a biblical principle. Mm. So all that said, how do you do it? I mean, again, as I said, find what works, do more of it, stop doing what doesn't work. The problem as lawyers is we don't like, this other thing, we're conflict averse, ironically, right? Have you noticed this about lawyers and law firm owners? We're conflict averse. We will wait on a problem. We'll have a problem with an employee, let's say, and they'll do it 10 times, and it will be.
I disagree with you on one point. I don't think it's the lawyer in you that's conflict averse. It's the business owner in you that's conflict averse. As lawyers, you're not conflict averse, but as business owners, you are.
No, I disagree. I think lawyers are conflict averse in their personal lives, right? I think we love conflict. Look, you become a lawyer, I believe. You become a lawyer because you don't know how to resolve conflicts. And so you study law to learn tools to resolve conflicts. Think about it, right? And so lawyers, and let me go with my example and see if I can turn your opinion on this. I'm fine with dealing with other people's conflicts all the time. I can see the path forward. I can see how, this needs to go this way, this needs to go this way, all that stuff. In my own personal life, let me give you an example of what I think most law firm owners struggle with early on. You have an employee who does not meet the expectations you have for that employee, and yet you do not say anything about that to the employee because you are disliking conflict. And business owners are the same way, by the way. I'm not going to say business owners aren't this way. They are. And then you let it go, and you let it go, and you let it go. So by the 8th time, you're super pissed. They do it again, and what do? You blow up. And maybe you fire them. Yep. Maybe you just blow up and they quit, one or the other. But the point is that it's your fault because you didn't address it sooner.
Of course.
Right? So when I say we're conflict averse, we just don't want to deal with it. And I do know I talk to a lot of, young law firm owners, and they say this, they've got this problem with this person. I'm like, it's never going to get any better. They don't automatically and magically overnight say, I'm not going to get discovery out timely, right? They just don't do that. If you don't address it with them, they're going to think it's okay with you that they did it this way. That's really what they're thinking. And so by the 8th time when you yell at them, they say, wait, what are you talking about? This was okay with you for the last 7 times. Why are you yelling at me about this now? And then you're all in disarray and emotionally charged, and everybody says you're a jerk because you yelled at them instead of addressing it very early on. And if you address it earlier on, it can help, right? It can help you as a manager. And that's one of the things I don't think we're definitely not trained to be managers, for sure. Manage workforce. We're trained on identifying legal issues and coming up with legal solutions. But I generally think of most of the lawyers I see, we're all bad managers, and my good managers are not lawyers, for sure.
Interesting.
I have to train my lawyers to be good managers.
Interesting. So I always think about business as 5 revenue impact zone, or RITs, right? There's your marketing, there's your sales. You guys refer to it as an intake, but for the rest of the world, it's sales. There's your operations, delivering the service that marketing promised, sales sign on the dotted line for. Then there's HR and leadership. What are you specifically good at? Like now that you're managing a firm, so it's leadership. Very good. So you're definitely in the right place.
Yeah, I mean, I think that and man, that's a loaded term these days. I'll be honest with you. You want to talk about? I don't want to get too esoteric here, or whatever. But I'm really struggling personally with leadership because it's you get to a certain point. John Maxwell says the law of the lid. Right, an organization is limited by the leadership ability of the main guy. Yep. Right. Now, I do think that presupposes almost a dictatorial system, right? So like if the main guy at the top, because I actually feel like our firm is run by 12 people, 14 people, but I'm ultimately the guy who's the decision maker. So, and when I say I'm really in a state of flux is, I'm noticing that there's, in our society now, it seems like there's a trend of leadership by extremes. Listen, it's very easy to lead if you can polarize people and get one small group of people to believe that the other side is the enemy. That's very low value leadership. But bringing people together and having a common goal, that's very difficult to do. And I think that's where, as a leader, I'm challenged because I have a broader and broader base of people who I'm trying to lead, inspire, and help them come to the next level of their abilities. And, there are some of these polarizing issues, especially now after the election. I don't know when it's going to air, but we're just past the election. And I think it's on both sides. I don't think this is a Trump thing or a Biden thing or a Harris thing. I think this is just generally the paradigms of leadership in our world right now are very extreme. And so I look at leadership as the ability to inspire others to be their very best without demonizing someone else, and that's challenging because it's very easy to demonize somebody, get everybody rallied together around that demonization or that demon over there. But then what? Where do you go with that? How does that really uplift and inspire people to be their best? And so I'm in the leadership seat, so to speak. I think, and we can talk about important things of leadership: transparency, authenticity. Being able to admit you're wrong, but still maintain some degree of influence and control. If you're wrong too many times, people lose respect for you. But I think if you admit that you're wrong, but you try and make it right, that's a much more powerful thing. There's a trend now where people don't ever admit they're wrong. Like, how do you get people to respect you if you can never admit you're wrong? So when you talk about that, I'm not good at sales. I'm not good at marketing, although I was a salesman before. I can recognize what works in marketing. Production. So leadership and systems and processes, because I can see the processes work okay. But that's basically it. Everybody else in the firm does other things, and I'm definitely not the best at any of those. Probably not the best at leadership, but I'm the guy. So.
And I noticed that you mentioned that, honey, your wife is in charge of marketing, correct?
That's right. She's the chief marketing officer.
Is she the best person at the firm to lead the marketing efforts?
Yes.
How did she get to be that way?
We work together on that because to be the best marketing person in a firm, you have to understand, when I talk about core values, that leads into your messaging, right? So what's your messaging? So to have a compelling message, you have to have a draw. You have to know who your clients are. I know our demographic of the clients we appeal to. I know what our chief message are. I split test the advertising. I know what message resonates. When we have our kids on TV, it's much more powerful than when it's just us. Aggressive lawyer doesn't work for our demographic, all those kinds of things. We've done all those tests, but how does she get there? Well, she is every day in the trenches with real people, understanding their real stories, right? And so she understands, and she lived that real story, walking across the border at 14, foster care, flea market, her mom ripped off time and time again, the beater car they had stolen, the one they had to take gallons of water to pour in the radiator. The first car they bought, they had to keep pouring water in the radiator to keep it running. Just these terrible stories. Full scholarship to UF. Fortunately, she was able to get that scholarship, and just scratching and struggling. She understands people's pain, and she remembers it. Right? She remembers that. So that's an authentic message that she has. And we all have authentic messages. We all have our hero's journey. We all have our struggles. So find out what your messaging is. And then you just double down on that and find your tribe that resonates with that. And she has. And so she's done that. And then, the things like metrics and measuring, fortunately, I was involved in that early in the firm, and I kind of taught her that side. She went and studied marketing herself, like how to message herself, on how to conduct herself well on radio interviews and TV interviews and things like that. So she studied that herself and developed it. And then we started hiring people who were really talented in marketing. And so we have a great marketing team also. And, and it's just grown and grown. Willie Gary one time, I don't know if you know who Willie Gary is, a great PI lawyer, great plaintiff's lawyer, really just, a giant among trial lawyers. I talked to him years before I started my firm. He said, look, Greg, just do a little bit every day. And I thought that was the dumbest advice I ever heard until I did a little bit every day. And just if you try and find the one thing, like I'm always reading a leadership book or a CEO book, or I'm always reading something. Right now I'm reading the 3 things every CEO does, right? That's what I'm studying, right? And it talks about KPIs and other things and see if I'm using it right. You got to always be trying to develop yourself and develop your organization and identify. So a little bit every day. And I know you say, wow, it's just this monster firm now, but it is just 1,000 little steps every day. And when we see something went wrong and we try and fix it, and we may mess it up, then we come back and try and fix it again. That's the big picture. But what did my wife specifically do? We came up with a message early on, which was a very authentic message. You cannot manufacture a compelling message. You just can't. It's got to be who you are. And then you've got to just inject that into these marketing streams and see what comes back to you. And then, read a book on marketing, split testing, for example, like which message gets more calls. And then you just test it and then go with the one that gets more calls. I just learned early on that when we put my kids on TV, we got more calls. So you know what I did? I went out and got a whole bunch of kids, and I made a bunch of commercials for back to school with kids. And that got even better. And people remember us. Look, my hair's long, right? People didn't recognize me before my hair was long. Now everybody recognizes me because my hair's long. That's not something you expect. I get a call from a client, not a client from a perspective. I'm not going to hire you because Greg's hair is too long. I swear to God, that was the call, right? You know what? I'm going to keep it long. You know why? Because you're noticing. I was at a coffee shop the other day. They're like, oh, you're Jany Martinez-Ward's husband. You talk about an ego shot, right? Yeah, the firm is the Ward Law Group. No, but yeah, right, I am. She's like, I recognize you because of the hair. So, I mean, I know these things sound silly. It's just stupid, but it's like a little by little every day, seeing what impacts the market and being true to your customer. And then, as I said, when you get those customers, give them great service, man. Like they're your mom or your dad or your brother or your sister. Like just treat them like family. And you've got to be authentic in every step of the way. If you're sitting in a meeting with your client and you're looking at your watch, you're going to lose that client. They'll never send you another case. But if you sit in a meeting with a client and you say, if you happen to be there, say, tell me your story. Tell me how has this crash affected your life? And then, what I do, by the way, talk about leadership. I only usually talk to the bad clients. When I say bad, meaning the clients who had a bad experience. They're not bad clients. It's our bad, not theirs. What do we do wrong? Tell me everything we did wrong. Because when somebody's mad at you, they're going to tell you everything you did wrong. Let me tell you, that's my checklist of things to improve. Do you as a lawyer want to sit there? I shut up. I let them tell me what else did we do wrong? What else did we do wrong? What else could we have done better? Where did you feel like we dropped the ball? I get a list of 20 things. Maybe 5 of them are right? Maybe 15 are just them venting, but 5 of them are right. And I'll say, Mr. Client, how can I make this right for you? Right? This is my firm and I'm sorry we let you down this way. How can we make it right for you? A lot of times they say, there's nothing, I just want to let you know. I appreciate you giving me feedback because you know what, Mr. Client? Most people don't tell me what we do wrong. And I want to make sure that everyone has the best experience possible with my firm. And I appreciate that you told me this. And I mean it. Like you can tell when I say this, I'm remembering one client saying this. So that's why I have the authenticity in my voice. It's true. I really am thankful to them. But you got to get your ego out of the way for that because you're going to want to say, no, I didn't mess this up. Or my people didn't. And my people do that too. And I go to my people when they're arguing with a client, stop arguing. Ask them what else. Apologize and make sure it doesn't happen again. That's it. The only bad Google reviews we usually have are things like where there's no insurance. And I think that's a failure on our part because we didn't explain it to them well enough, right? They say, oh, 1-star service, these people are whatever. Well, there was no insurance coverage, but we did a bad job explaining to them. And so that's bad on us. That's bad on us. So.
For you, remarkable insights. Let me give the list again. Believe in yourself and in your success. Niche down. Specialize in whatever it is that you're strong in, delegate everything else. When it comes to marketing, make sure that your message is authentic. Pick a channel for marketing and work on that channel until you squeeze everything out of it before you start going into other channels. Don't spread yourself too thin. Focus on what works.
Yeah. Let me tell you another thing about the marketing channel, by the way. I keep getting you off track, but with a marketing channel, there is a tipping point because sometimes you'll invest and it will have 0 results. And then you reach the minimum spend and then I call it the tipping point. So you got to make sure you spend up to a point where you should be getting results. And then if it's still not working, then you cut it. But
how do you know where that point is?
What we did early was we would do radio contests. And we would say, we give away $100 or $1,000, and we linked it up pretty easily, or not pretty easily. We linked it up pretty nicely. We had our jingle, and we said, if you memorize our jingle, and you call and you sing the jingle correctly, you win $100 or $500 during drive time. And we see how many people would call. If a radio talent or TV talent or something doesn't have anybody calling, you could have somebody who's got 1 million Instagram followers, but if they don't call you, then they're useless. So you got all these, people who are, have a lot of followers, but if they're not an engaged audience, but you could have somebody who's got 10,000 followers and you get 20 calls. Okay. They're listening very intently to what's going on. So that was just one way we came up with. I can't think of the other ones. This was all 12 years ago, but we would do these things where you have a little contest or we'd sponsor something to see what the call volume was. That's one way to do it.
This was for you to figure out whether people actually listen to what the person who was on that station actually talking about. Just to determine if people are actually tuning in or it's just playing in the background.
Right.
Got it.
Now, because everyone will cite their ratings and the ratings are a scam.
Doesn't matter. They don't
Doesn't
matter.
matter. You could have the top rated show, but if they don't believe the on air talent, or or there's 10 other people who are doing the same thing you're doing, you're going to get lost in the noise.
Yeah.
So you want to find out how you can penetrate, right? And that's what we did in the early days.
This is very interesting. A lot of law firms that would consider advertising on radio 20, 25, 30 years ago, today wouldn't. But in the last 2 weeks, this is second time that I'm listening to someone very successful in the BI space who's talking about traditional advertising. I forget the name of the guy who spoke at the conference I was at just a couple of weeks ago. The name of the law firm is Sweet James. He is the one who founded it. They're growing toward $1 billion top line. And when he was asked, how do you divvy up your marketing budget? And he said, well, it's 65 traditional, 35 digital. And when they asked, well, what do you do traditionally? He's like, mostly it's broadcast. And he included in the broadcast billboards because it's broadcasting your message out there. It just happens to be on the side of the highway. It's radio and it's TV. And now you're saying that you're investing substantial sums in your budget toward radio advertising. Whenever I think about radio advertising, I understand that whenever you play those commercials, whether it's done by talent or it's just a regular 30-second or 60-second spot, people who are listening to that commercial, they're not going to respond to it right away. They have to have had an event that leads them to actually responding to this. In your experience, how long did it take of you running the same commercials or trying different A/B testing, different commercials, different messaging on the radio before you got that first call? Before you got that
3 months.
3 months.
3 months.
Got
3
it.
months.
So it's
3 months, 6 months, 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months.
You know,
Got it. It's very, very important. If you're a law firm owner or if you're a law firm marketer and you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, like I've done this for a month and it didn't work and I pulled out. That's the failure point. P.T. Barnum.
Yeah, you got to do at least 3 months, and you have to have the adequate budget too. That's the other part I'm talking about. I mean, to give you the absolute true transparency, we had advertised on this one radio station for 3 months, and it wasn't working. We had a 6-month contract, and we had nothing for the first 2 months. Yep. And I said, listen, compress the rest of the budget into the 3rd month, and if it doesn't work now, we're not going to do it anymore. And that's when we got big. Yeah, we went big. Now. But that was big for us back then. Yeah. Now this isn't even a line item on our budget. You know what I mean? But back then it was, $10,000 or something.
But so you quadrupled in 1 month. You quadrupled your monthly budget. You're like,
yes.
go big, or let's stop this.
Right. I just had to know, and I had done the preliminary contests and all that kind of stuff, and it seemed like it should work, and we just weren't getting traction. And then we got the big case, or we got that first tender case in, and then we got 3 more that month. And so I was like, okay, all right. Now I didn't do anything dumb like say, okay, every case is going to be $16,000 fee. I did say, okay, well, let me re-up on the $16,000 that we had gotten and do another contract and see. And so that's what started us.
Got it. And that got you going, and that paid off handsomely, because I know we talked before we hit the record button about different marketing techniques that you deployed over the years. And through a lot of testing, you got to the point where you were drawing in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. And it's like a flywheel. The more you do it, the more referrals you get, the more you expand your reach. And now you're opening another office in New Jersey.
Right.
Yeah. Got to keep feeding that marketing machine, but not blindly. With testing.
Correct. Yeah. That's where it gets dangerous. Yeah. This is the other side of the hill where it's, you guys are running up the hill, and it's really hard to get those first few hits. When you're on the other side of the hill, it's really easy to spend a lot of money and not get the results. We dropped $100,000 on a Google campaign that was literally wasted. Yep. Literally wasted. And we're still arguing with Google because they just, I don't know what went wrong. I had a digital media guy who, he thought it was going to go well. It didn't go well. We can blow through a lot of money real fast if we're not watching it very closely. And so I've got to be very careful. That's why my wife is a CMO. I look at this, what are going to be the black swan events, right? We could have a law change, which we had tort reform in Florida, which, let me go tangential again. AI, they have AI CEOs now, right? I just read an article, I think it was in Forbes, or I forget where it was, maybe Harvard Business Journal. They said they have these AI CEOs, and the AI CEOs outperform the actual CEOs in all but one circumstance. And the one circumstance is black swan events, COVID, law changes. And that's where the CEO is able to, when you say believe, I would say faith. We have the vision to get through the absolute disaster. And the problem with the AI CEOs is they do short-term profits and gains over long-term vision. So that's where human beings are still good. Now, maybe they'll be able to build an AI bot later on that can do that. But right now, our CEO, the best vision we have is for Black Swan events. I've had 3 Black Swan events in my life in the last 12 years. One was a personal health issue, which just made me depressed, and I couldn't work for 3 months. It was pretty bad. One was the COVID, and one was this tort reform change in Florida, which looked like it was going to be catastrophic. And it's bad, but it's not catastrophic. But it was going to shut us down for real. Like there would be no more claims for Florida at all, which is not supposed to be what they're doing. But they have all 3 branches are controlled by Republicans, and they have a dislike for personal injury, and the insurance industry has a strong lobby. So things have changed, but you got to adapt. You've got to evolve and adapt, and that's just the nature of the practice. And by the way, in each of those 3 events, well, not the health issue, but the COVID and the other thing, like a lot of other practitioners said, I'm done. I just can't handle this anymore because the stress of that. Man, you got to have some thick skin to get through some of these things. Not to mention at a cocktail party when you say you're a PI lawyer and everyone's going to laugh at you. That's just the nature of being a personal injury lawyer, ambulance chaser, blah, 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 whatever. So, you have to be willing to put up with that and have passion and belief in your clients that what I do for my clients is more important than somebody making fun of me at a cocktail party,
Good for you. I'll sum it up with good for you. It's an incredible story of success. And again, in a fairly short span of time, 12 years is nothing when you look at what you have accomplished, you and your wife together. So congrats on your ginormous success. Greg, you mentioned that you talk to other attorneys and you coach them. Is that a side business, something that you enjoy doing, or?
I mean, right
I did
now
not
I
know
just
this
do
about
it.
you.
Yeah, I'm a member of PILMA with
Okay.
Ken Hardison.
Yep.
I don't know if I can talk about other
No,
folks.
love Ken, know him personally, great guy.
Yeah,
We'll
Ken's a
advertise him
great
all day
guy.
long.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back. I'm in the 8-figure group, of course. A lot of great guys and women in that group. I think, as I said early on, get in a mastermind group if you're looking to grow. His group I think the PILMA groups are the best groups. I say this, I've been in a lot of masterminds. I think Ken's group is the best group. As far as the coaching goes, I'm building a website. I'm writing a book about this, and it's a faith-based book talking about kind of spiritual principles in business. So that should be out within 3 to 6 months. And it'll be through the website and Instagram. Attorney Greg Ward is my Instagram handle. I do little motivational things every week, and as things roll forward, I do coaching just because I want to help people. I don't do coaching to charge for it. And so I say coaching, meaning people just reach out through a PILMA group or something and say, hey, Greg, what do you think about this? I'm always happy to share if I, but you got to get on my calendar. It's, I'm pretty busy. So if you have some ideas or you want some feedback, I'm happy to try and help. I will admit that, look, I don't know everything. As I mentioned before, and as Steve Jobs had said, business is really failing forward. I have made a lot of mistakes, and I'm happy to talk about my mistakes so I can hope other people avoid a lot of the mistakes I made. But you'll make your own mistakes and you'll learn from those. And the painful mistakes are the ones you really learn great lessons from. I can summarize it in saying that, we as lawyers are not inherently good business people, although we have the tools to be great business people. Jim Collins in Good to Great said that the best CEOs are lawyers because we ask the right questions. And so ask a lot of questions and be open to the answers. Don't get your ego engaged until late in the process. And, and really try and explore other options. If you take a step back from you being the guy or the girl at the center of your firm and that is all you and say, hey, how can we make the biggest impact? That's the right step on the right path to growth. You've got to get out of the way of the growth of your organization. And when I did that, when I realized it wasn't about me, it's about my clients, it's about my team, that's when explosive growth really started happening because we all started getting in the same direction and making sure we're giving the same service and great service to the clients who need it.
Yeah. Amazing insights. And Greg, you lead by example. You are part of a coaching group. You settled $250 million in cases last year. So I assume this is a high 8-figure law firm now. And there you are, part of PILMA. And this is definitely a plug for PILMA. Again, Ken, great guy, wealth of information. And if you join PILMA, you'll meet guys like Greg Ward. And Greg, as you listen to us speak for close to an hour now, can dispel a lot of very, very valuable insights. So PILMA.org, if I'm not mistaken, PILMMA.
Correct.
So
BILMMA. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
so great organization. I saw Greg last time, no more than 10 days ago at the Business of Law conference. So
Yeah, I was supposed to actually be there, and then my schedule got filled up, and I couldn't be there. But yeah, I think I was supposed to speak there actually on
were you?
on the Blue Shark panel.
Okay, got it.
Seth, it was something I forget what the panel was, but I just wasn't able to make it out there. But yeah, those are great things. But the PILMA, I think I'm speaking in the Denver
Mhm.
conference as well. I'm not sure what the topic is yet, but Ken has been a great resource. He's the real deal. A lot of guys, a lot of masterminds and stuff. It's not 100. They don't make you give. Ken makes you give. When we do our 8-figure group, we've got to put our numbers out there. We've got to, say all the good things and the bad things. There's no holding back. If you hold back, you're out. And I love that
I did
about
not
Ken.
know that.
Like yeah. If
Uh-huh.
and I got to tell you, it's a little uncomfortable at first.
Hmm.
Now he does give market exclusivity, so it's not like I'm, exposing myself in other markets that I'm going to have competition in. But I got to tell you, I met some of my best friends in that organization because these guys are all very similar minded. You don't get to 8 figures, doing this for yourself, for your own personal gain. You get it because you really love the clients and you want to do something different, and have an impact. And all of those folks, and there's some great women too. I say guys, I shouldn't be using a male gender pronoun. I should say women, because Jan Dills, for example, is in that group. She's amazing, female attorney out of West Virginia. Of course my wife is in there too. So it's important that you learn from other people who have gone ahead of you, but listen then. And that's the frustration that I have, because I'll tell you what, if I give you advice and you don't listen to the advice and it goes really bad, probably not going to get on my calendar as fast next time, because it's like, I want to be here to help you pick up the pieces, but I'm moving fast and there's a lot of things to get done. I don't want to be arrogant about it, but listen, nobody helped me on this way up until I met, Ken and some of the other groups. So the first few years, it was pretty brutal. And I just want to be able to help people over that hump.
That's interesting. Was Ken instrumental and Pilma, was it instrumental to your success?
As instrumental as anything, I mean, yes. What Ken has done really well is especially with the 8-figure group, but this is true for all of his groups, is you get to sit down with people, and if they have an issue, if you haven't had that issue, you're going to have that issue, And so we're all, we sit down and we say, here's what's good, here's what's bad. Anybody have any solutions? And we started off, man. We were the little guy on the totem pole. We were just taking, and we tried to give, but we just didn't have any. Now we're one of the bigger firms in the group, so I feel like people listen. And when I told you, remember, do great for your VIP clients, and if you're one of my vendors, do great for me. When I go to Pilma, I say, I'm going to tell you a great vendor. Here's a great vendor for you, and I guarantee you at least 5 of those guys are going to hire you. I just know it. Because when one of my friends says, hey, this is a great vendor, I'm going to go hire those people right away. Because it's just too hard. One of the big stresses about this is finding good vendors. Going back, Ben Glass, another one, right? I started with Ben Glass years ago. I'm not with his group anymore, but I remember early on, and I met John Fisher too, another great guy. But Ben Glass, the Marketing Vultures, that's a great book. Dealing with marketing vultures, because that is one thing that's out there. Understand, if you go into the land of marketing and you start talking to vendors, radio ads and TV ads, and marketing companies, lot of vultures. And what does that mean? They're going to pick apart your carcass, because they're going to move on to the next. They're not committed to your success. The only person who's committed to your success is yourself and me, if we're like-minded, right? If I believe that you are authentic, I want you to succeed, right? But the marketing people just want to get your money. They don't care about you. They'll try and tell you they care about you, but they really don't care about you, because there's the next client. You're just the next person. And early on, by the way, they'll sell you their garbage, right? Until you protect yourself from their garbage, marketing reps will sell you garbage. What's my lowest, what's my highest profit, 3 p.m. on a Monday, the show that has crappy ratings. Well, I get you a great deal on the 3 p.m. advertising.
You're talking
slots.
about media sales reps. Got it. I'm like, marketing.
Yeah, media sales reps. Thank you.
Media sales rep. Quite
Media
different
sales.
than marketing. Okay, got it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, but even marketing people, because you can have a marketing
There are
person who's
some.
an aggregation of the media sales rep, right? They're my point is you've got to watch out for yourself in that space. No one is your friend until they're proven that you're a friend,
Sure.
right? And I still don't feel like I have any friends in the marketing space, right? Because you're going to get adverse with them at contract renewal time. So you got to understand you're friends, but your interests are adverse because they want to sell the most at the highest price. Now I will tell them, look, if I'm getting my cases for less than $1,000 a case, you're going to get more of my money. If I'm spending $3,000 per case, you're going to get less of my money, or no of my money, none of my money.
What's your average case value?
Well, it depends on the market. I use those generally. I can tell you, you should try and keep your case costs under 10%. So in New York, the case values are much higher than they are in Florida. So, the money spent in New York is bigger per case than it would be in Florida. So in Florida, if my average settlement is, let's say, $10,000, it's higher than that. But let's say my average settlement is $10,000, you shouldn't spend more than $1,000 per case. And if you're getting cases at $800, you spend more on that station until you reach the top and where you top out at. That's how you get your metrics, by the way.
Got it.
So, but 10% is a good rule of thumb. And Ken will tell you this. 15% now is getting to be the new norm because traditional media is underperforming.
Yep.
So you're probably closer to 15%. Yep. But you find the gems that are at 8% or 9%.
Rare.
Yeah, man, drill on those. Yes,
Rare.
that's your gold mine.
Yeah, I can tell you we have a lot of clients because marketing is what we do, all digital, all search marketing. 15% is the norm. It's absolutely the norm, especially in competitive markets like South Florida.
Yes, and for digital, right. Digital is a little bit more expensive, but you kind of have to go there now.
You have to.
Because, TV and radio are getting a little saturated. Now, I haven't tried TV and radio, and I'm doing TV and radio in New Jersey. I'm sorry, in New York, but not in New Jersey.
Yeah. And
Texas, most of it's coming from other stuff. But yeah, that digital marketing, that 15% is becoming the new norm.
Yeah.
And if you're in expansion mode, again, all this is really complex. If you're in expansion mode, go to 30%. You can increase your ad budget of 30% total revenue and really expand. And then you hopefully will reap some of the benefits of that. But you can't do that if you don't have the systems in place.
Right.
And if you don't have the good team.
Yeah.
You can spend and get a bunch of cases. And if you drop the ball on those cases, you're going to go out of business, period.
For sure. Right?
You gotta deliver and over deliver. And so when we grew organically, could we have gotten here even faster? Yeah, but we would have hurt a lot of clients along the way. And I don't think we would have the quality that we have now. Another quick metric, look at your average settlement value per year, right? That's another thing to see. I look at if our average settlements are going up, we're giving better service. If our average settlement is going down, there's something wrong there. We don't want to grow at the expense of getting settlements for clients. Now, we send out cases we wouldn't take before, right? Now, we scratching the bumpers, we almost send all those out. So, so our settlement value should be going up pretty dramatically, our average settlement value per case. So you want to look at that as well. So you make sure you're giving better service. That's a metric we look at every year.
Good for you. You're one of the top business-minded law firm owners I've met, and I've been in this field for many years. And I've run this podcast for 2 years now, and I've interviewed many people here. So again, Greg, congrats on your success. You've done remarkably well. Just remarkably well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you want to bring my wife back, because she can talk all about marketing for you guys. Like I know some of it, but she's brilliant in marketing. So if you want to talk to her about the marketing stuff and the actual strategies, especially for the Hispanic market,
yep.
Because I don't believe the political changes are going to have the mass exodus of people in our country. I think a lot of Latin people are here to stay. A lot of them are citizens or green card holders anyway. So that's a market that's here to stay, and it's one of the fastest growing markets in the country. And so you'd be foolish to not come up with what your authentic message is for that space. And and there's a lot of lawyers that are underserving that community. So I challenge you to make an authentic, real commitment to that group and serve them, because they are really a precious group of people in our country. They come here and work hard. They love this country. A lot of them love the country more than we do. And, they just want to raise their family in a safe place, and they're willing to give back. But sometimes they get really badly hurt. And when they do, there's not always a safety net there for them. So we really got to help them over that tough spot, maybe make their life a little better.
It's an interesting side point. And I want to make sure that we do book your wife on this podcast. We'll get her email address, send it out. I love it that you brought up that many of the immigrants love this country more than people who were born here do. And I think there's a really good reason for that. I'm an immigrant. I've been here for 31 years. I came here from the former Soviet Union. And when you grow up somewhere else, it is very easy to contrast and compare and understood how good we have it in this country, even on the worst day.
Yeah.
Comparatively speaking. I know your wife came from Cuba. I've been to Cuba almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Talk about hard.
The people are beautiful and amazing, and the government is awful.
Awful.
It's just awful.
Awful. Wherever communists go, they just F things up. They know how to F things up really badly. So I've been to Cuba. It was very nice people, like you said, very depressing trip.
Yeah.
It smelled like Soviet Union. I did not like it. Did not like it at all. So,
It's
oh,
tough. I have a lot of Cuban friends, and they,
yeah.
you know, and it's and honestly, I hate to say it, but it scarred them.
Oscar
You know,
them
I
for
think
sure.
there are scars. I wish they could heal from those scars.
Yeah,
It's a very traumatic experience, and there's a lot of pain,
yeah.
and Venezuelans now too.
Oh, yeah,
Venezuela is kind of the same as Cuba now.
yeah, yeah.
Great people, terrible government.
Extreme
You
poverty.
know, yeah,
Extreme poverty. Like dead smack in the middle of Havana, by the ocean, right there. Houses without windows, no doors,
yeah,
fallen
yeah.
off
Like
balconies.
if you were a paint store owner in Cuba, you'd be on top of the world because they need some paint, right? Like if you
If
walk
they
around, like, all
if they had the
the
money to buy paint, but many
right,
of them don't. Most of them don't have money to buy paint.
right,
2015, when I was there, average salary $25 a month.
yeah,
I recently had to go get a gallon of paint, which was a sticker shock to me because I haven't bought paint since way before the recent inflation. $90.
wow.
Average salary $25. Anyway, Greg, thank you so much. Wonderful insights. Loved having you on the podcast. I'm sure I'll love having Hani on the podcast as well. We'll reach out.
Look forward to it. All right, thanks for the time, and I hope this was helpful. I know we kind of scattershot
Incredibly
some
helpful.
things, but
Incredibly helpful.
we're always looking to help
Yeah.
out, and hope you guys have a lot of success.
Thank you, sir.